Hey everyone, Reaper here again with another video. This time I decided to come on camera instead of showing just the book. The reason why is because I wanted to talk about a couple of things, a couple of topics concerning the hobby. Now, these things are just my opinion, okay? They do not mean that these are the ways or these are the thoughts that you all should have or you should follow. It's just I base my conclusions on the things I'm going to talk about in this video from my experience. And we all do that, right? In all things in life. So I just decided to lend that out to some of these topics. When it comes to restoration, when it comes to qualified grades, when it comes to upgrading, and when it comes to buying expensive paper. Okay, I'll start out with some of my views. Now, I've mentioned this before in other videos and on chats. I'll talk a little bit about it right now. Um, Try to be a little more precise with it. My views on restoration and qualified grades. Now, when it comes to restored books, I know there is a lot of, now I have my notes too, so hopefully I won't forget everything. I know when it comes to restored books, I know a lot of people are very against it, and I am too. To be quite honest, I would if I had a low grade book, I wouldn't want to go out and get it restored. But when it comes to buying certain restored books, I'm okay with buying certain books. Okay, they would have to be obviously very, very expensive if they were not restored. And I would buy a restored copy of that pricey book because maybe I don't want to spend all the money that it will take to get that book. Okay, so I would definitely say money is a big thing in it when it comes to me about restoration. I have a few restored books in my collection. I have, you've seen them before. I have Hulk 1. Now, the reason why I went with Hulk 1, a restored Hulk 1, is because I believe this is a 2.5. Sorry for the glare. A 2.5 Hulk. I would not spend the money on a Blue Label 2.5 Hulk. Now, I don't say that in a sense of I don't understand why people would do something like that. No, that's not it at all. It's because Hulk, for me, is not really that big of a character that I need in my collection. Okay? I obviously have it. It's a restored copy, so I do have it. But not enough for me to spend 2.5, 3.0, and above prices Blue Label. I saw an opportunity to purchase the first appearance of Hulk, this copy, from my local comic book shop. And I liked the price, and I said, you know what? I would never pay, like I just said to you, a 2.5, 3.0 Blue Label price for a Hulk because the book is not as nearly as significant for me. I'm not saying it's not significant to others. I'm not saying it's not significant when it comes to comic book collecting. That's not what I'm saying. But for me, I like the Hulk, but I don't love the Hulk. But when I saw the opportunity to get a restored copy that was in my price range, I said, why not? Be cool, and I could be perfectly happy with it. And that's one of the things that you got to keep in mind. You have to be perfectly happy with what you purchase. For whatever reason, you think that you're going to make money on it down the line, you're buying it as an investment, or you're buying a restored book, whatever it may be, you should be okay with it. Thinking that you're going to make money on it or you're going to be happy with keeping it in your collection, whatever it is. So that's the way I go about it. And I did the same thing here with this other book. Now, the difference between the two, between the Hulk, let me get the Hulk back up here because I know you'd probably rather see the books than my face. The difference between the two when it comes to restoration, the restoration on this book cannot be removed. It's not extensive, but it's slight, moderate amount of restoration. It's got a couple things going on with it that I do not believe would be a good idea to attempt to remove. Now, this one here, although low grade, it has a small amount of glue on the spine. Now, that may be a good thing to have removed. It may not be. I don't know. But whatever the case may be, whatever it is, I'm okay with it. And besides, both of those books, the other thing that both those books have in common is not only that they can be very pricey, they're very easy to find. Sure, you could go on eBay or you could go to one of those big cons and you could see Incredible Hulk 1 on one of the big dealers on one of their walls. You might see a Detective 140, but they're not as common as some other big key books, you know? So I said to myself, when am I ever going to get these? And that's what led me to the decision to get these and to be okay with it. Now, I may try to have the restoration removed off of the Detective 140 in the future, but if it's something that cannot be removed, if it's professionally, the professional opinion is do not remove it, okay, that's fine with me. But again, you got to be okay with this when it comes to what you want to buy, for whatever reason you're buying. You know, you're going to flip one day, or you're going to keep it, or you're going to sell, you're going to cash out down the line eventually. It's entirely up to you. I applaud anybody that follows any one of those ways, whether you want to keep it for yourself, you want to hand it down, you want to eventually cash out on it, you want to try to make a quick flip on it. That's all cool. So that's how I feel about restoration. Now, would I buy a restored Luke Cage 1? Would I buy a restored Marvel Spotlight 5? You know, normally I would say no, but you never know. You never know. It's always good to keep an open mind. If I got like a great deal on a restored book that I think that I can make money on by having the restoration removed, if I'm positive on that, I would get it. But just, you know, my standard answer, without putting any extra thought, deeper thought into it, I'd probably be like, not really. Not really. And another point that I would like to make about restored books, I know people, like I said, you know, it's not very popular to buy them. But another point, aside from the one I made earlier, sometimes, though, if you're able to get restored books cheap, okay, maybe you could take the restoration off, maybe you can't. Sometimes they're good and you hold on to them, you can sell them, get your money back, and make some money. You could flip them and get a decent amount, depending on what the book is, of course. I mean, like, again, you know, certain books are not going to flip for very much when it comes to having that purple label. But I will say this: I had a couple more restored books other than the ones I showed you so far, and I sold them. And I made, you know, granted they were not, you know, common books, but I sold them and I made really good money. And guess what? That's what pretty much paid for this. I mean, really. And do I miss those books? Nope. So sometimes it serves, you know, a good purpose for you. So that's just another thing to keep in mind about, you know, if you could get cheap restored books that you think you could flip, despite the fact that they're restored, hey, it might be something to look into. Now, let's talk a little bit about Qualified. I really don't have too much to say about Qualified because, you know, once again, we're talking about slabbing and all that stuff. And Qualifieds, do you prefer? And this came up as a question recently on one of our shows by Maurice Devereaux. He asked, well, you know, I have Swamp Thing 37. It's signed, but it's hasn't been verified. If I want to get it slabbed, should I go to CBCS where they verify the signature, or do I go to CGC and get the green label? I would say, and we answered this, and I'll elaborate more on it, I would say go to CBCS. I would imagine it's only a matter of time before CGC has a service like that where they verify signatures. I think it would bring in a hell of a lot more business, and I'm sure they would. They know that, but why they're not doing it right now, it's you know, only they know. And I'm sure they have a legitimate reasoning for not doing it right now. But when we get back to the Qualifieds, I personally, aside from signatures, and never mind the signature portion of it, when I think of Qualifieds, I think that the book is missing something. It usually is, right? I mean, there are exceptions, right? But it's usually missing something. It may be missing the Marvel stamp, as the Incredible Hulk 181s are infamously known for. A lot of them, have the stamp, obviously. There are a ton of Incredible Hulk 181s, but then there are a lot that, had the stamp removed. And you'll see that 6.0 or 5.0 or 8.0 qualified grade. And it certainly affects the value of it, even though it may not interfere with the story. There are some books out there that have pinups removed, like the Amazing Spider-Man 3, which I'll get to in a few moments. Doesn't affect the story, but something's missing. I personally don't like it when something's missing. That's just my personality. Okay? Do I apply that to all things? Most things. Of course, there are always exceptions to everything. Like I had exceptions for the restoration. There are exceptions to everything. But for me, most of the time, I like to have complete things. When I used to, many years ago, I used to have action figures, and I liked them complete, unopened and all that stuff. Since I've sold all those, I've lost interest in them, cashed out on it. But even back then, I've always liked things complete. Now, I'll show another example. That's how I feel about comics. I don't like it when pinups are missing. I don't like it when coupons are clipped. I don't like it when centerfolds are missing, even though it may or may not interfere with the story or the main story or the main reason for you having that book. But again, it all depends on the issue. If I were richer and I had the opportunity to buy a Batman 1, or a Detective Comics 27, or a book like that where I had a decent amount of money to spend on a book like that, right? Not all of us have that, but if I did, and it may have had a coupon clipped, or maybe the centerfold to the Detective 27 was missing, but it doesn't interfere with the Batman story, hell yeah, I'd get it. Hell yeah. And the same thing I would say for coverless copies. A lot of times if I see the opportunity or a good deal to buy a coverless copy, it's because I'm probably going to flip it down the line and use that money toward a cover. Not to buy a cover, but a copy that has a cover, whether it's low grade or not. That's my view on coverless copies. I had an X-Men 1 coverless since I started collecting, 1993, and I sold it about 2 years ago, and that helped purchase a major purchase for me. I sold it 2 years ago. If I sold it a few months ago, I probably would have made a lot more, but that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is, and I'll talk about that in a few moments too when it comes to upgrading. So this video has everything about upgrades. Over the last couple of years, as my collection has been filling up, I've decided to not only still collect books I want to get, right? I'm starting to look back on some of my older books that I've had for many years, or books that I picked up within the last few years that I say, you know what, maybe it's time to upgrade. Sometimes what I consider an upgrade may not be considered a big upgrade to others. Like I said in the beginning of the video, it's to each his own. You do the things the way you want to do things. Now this is tied into that qualified speech I gave a few minutes ago. Here's a book that I upgraded last year. Amazing Spider-Man number 3. It's a 3.0. It's not a big deal. It's a nice looking 3.0, but it really isn't a big deal. This was one of the books that I had, my original copy I purchased many years ago. It was missing the pinup. And that drove me crazy. And it was a rough-looking copy, too. Make no mistake, it was a rough-looking copy. I probably would have wanted to upgrade it anyway. But the fact that it was missing a whole page just drove me crazy. To where it actually kicked me in the butt to try to get a, decent-looking copy. So like I said, a 3.0, that's not a huge upgrade. When people upgrade, they like to go above 5.0, right? And so do I. But with some books, I don't. Some books, I could be perfectly happy with a 3.0, 4.0, 5.0, whatever it is. And an opportunity came up to get this book, which I thought was a good price, and I went ahead and got it. Another example of just trying to upgrade books that are missing things, that was the Amazing Spider-Man 3 example, but just trying to upgrade things because of the way they look, is this book here, another 3.0 X-Men number 1. Okay, I had a 3.0, so how is this an upgrade? And I talked about this in other videos. Well, the number isn't an upgrade, but the look of the book is. The look of the book is. My original X-Men covered copy, number 1, the the cover wasn't as white as this, and the reds were faded, and that drove me crazy. It just, every time I looked at it, I have X-Men #3, which has a a whiter cover, and so whenever I would look at the X-Men 1 and the X-Men 3, I would always say, oh man, I just wish they could just swap the color, because I thought that the color on X-Men 3 was so much better, and I wish my X-Men #1, a book that's so important to me, had that. So when the opportunity came up to purchase this book right here, I sold my copy of X-Men #1. And I said, when I get it back, I want to make sure that I get a copy that has a whiter cover and doesn't have any fading. It could still be a 3.0. I would like to get a little higher, but it cannot have, a yellowed cover and, bleached red colors on it. And I went ahead and did it. Okay, now here's another point about upgrades. Let's say I wanted to upgrade my... I have it right here again. I'll show you this example. My Amazing Fantasy 15. Let's say I wanted to get a 3.0. Chances are I would sell my 2.0 before I got the 3.0. Now I know guys like ETA Nick, they'd rather get the book first, then sell. And that's a great way to look at things. For me, I do things a little differently. I don't readily have a 3.0 Amazing Fantasy 15 money on hand. So if I'm going to get that book, I will sell my copy and sell all the books that I don't really want anymore to have that money, so that when I see the book, when I see the price that I'm comfortable with paying, I just, get it. Not have to worry about, well, for me at least, not have to worry about, oh, now I have to sell this to get this money back and so forth. That just puts my mind at ease. That's just the way I work at it. That's the way I work when it comes to upgrading. That's just me. Let's say I sell the Amazing Fantasy 15, and then another book pops up, not Amazing Fantasy 15. Am I tempted to use that money for something else? No. It's just the way I am. No. I say, well, this is Amazing Fantasy 15 money. I can't afford to take out of that for something that's less important. And that's just the way I work when it comes to upgrades. Now, the last part of this video, I've heard this mentioned a couple times. We buy these books. They're obviously expensive. I showed a couple of expensive books here. A lot of you out there have shown pricey books or have spent a lot on books. We're spending all this money on paper. Paper, it degrades over time, right? I mean, granted, if you put it in the right conditions, you can prolong its life. Well, look, that could be said about anything. Oh, why do we spend all... I'm not saying anybody in the community says this or anything like that. It's like typically when you talk to somebody that doesn't really understand comic books or doesn't understand collecting, and you tell them, hey, I just bought an Amazing Fantasy 15, or I just bought whatever, their eyes will like widen to hear what you paid for the book. Well, I don't usually let that bother me, because I understand that those people don't understand the hobby, and usually I don't talk about the hobby with those people because of those reactions. It's just frustrating. But let's just go back to that. Well, you spend all this money. We're all spending all this money on paper, expensive paper that doesn't last forever. Well, look, nothing lasts forever. We don't last forever. There are people that I know that go out and spend $300, $400, $500 on jeans, clothing, because they have to have a certain brand, right? Well, clothing doesn't last forever. You wear it a normal amount of time. Over a period of several years, it starts to wear down. You get wear and tear on it. And what are you going to do? They fade, they rip, you throw them out and you buy something else, or you wear something else. Clothes fade, but people spend copious amounts of money on that. People run out and get the new iPhone every time it comes out. Well, why? Well, it's because they want the new phone. I mean, hey, that's cool. You get what you want, right? I don't care. But, people spend money, high dollar things on that, because their older phones typically don't last forever. An older phone that they may have spent a lot of money on a few years earlier, or a couple years earlier, right? What else? What else doesn't last forever? Practically everything. Everything. Cars. People go out and buy Mercedes Benz. People go out and buy BMW, luxury cars. Well, you drive them a normal amount of time over a period of several years. Well, that gets wear and tear, and they become very pricey to repair, those luxury cars, right? People spend money on that. The last one, people. Like I said in the beginning of this conversation, nothing lasts forever. I mean, you could drive your car a certain amount of miles and it will last a while. You may wear expensive clothes every now and then and they'll last for a while. You're maybe not on your phone all the time. You like doing the cool things that the modern phones could do every now and then, and it may last for a while. You may eat healthy, take care of yourself, and you may live a while. But no matter what, everything degrades. So to say that, oh, you spend all this money on paper, well, you spend tons of money on a lot of things. Sure, there are exceptions out there. There are people that don't spend a lot on anything, and that's cool. But everything fades, everything dies. Like I said, with people. Everybody out there, you could all say what your birthday is, right? You know what your birthday is. But guess what? You also have a death day that you don't know. Everything fades. So the point I'm trying to make is that, hey, if it's something that you are able to do, buy new phones, buy expensive cars, buy expensive comics, that doesn't hurt you financially, doesn't put you in a bad place, doesn't hurt anybody else, well, who cares what other people say? And you don't have to try to argue your point to anybody. It's just better than some people when it comes to certain things. That's just the truth. You do what you want, as long as it doesn't cause you or anybody else any harm. Thank you for watching, everyone. Take care.